In 1958, the United States created the North American Air Defense Command, also known as NORAD, to watch for Soviet bombers and incoming missiles. But within decades, its reach extended far beyond national borders. NORAD was now watching the entire planet. Just before dawn on January 13, 1996, NORAD operators made a call to Brazilian air defense. An object had entered Earth's atmosphere roughly 200 miles northeast of São Paulo. When Brazilian officials asked what it was, NORAD had only one answer: unidentified. This shifted the situation from normal airspace monitoring to the brink of the unknown. Minutes later, the object crashed near the quiet municipality of Varginha in Minas Gerais, sending a ripple through the calm pre-dawn hour.
Ficou parado.
Porque estava flutuando no passo aí. Até eu brinquei com ela, eu sei, esse negócio parece um submarino.
Não é cheio de luzinha, farolzinho com luz, nada disso. Ele era um objeto metálico, você vê que era um objeto bem polido, uma superfície bem lisa, e ele brilhava devido à claridade do dia, a luminosidade batia e refletia. Isso era o que me chamou muita atenção.
The Brazilian Army and Air Force rushed to the crash site, hoping to secure it before civilians arrived. They failed. Witnesses saw the craft, and the beings piloting it were already gone.
Aqui, ó, tá? Seria como se fosse a nave, tá ok? Isso aqui seria como se fosse um charuto, tá ok? Só que era um pouquinho mais arredondado aqui, tá? E aqui tinha janelas redondas. Nesse exato momento, qual a minha intenção? Poxa, tem pessoas precisando de ajuda. Tá caindo uma aeronave. Eu vejo a aeronave passar bem próximo à copa das árvores, relando nas copas das árvores e sumindo atrás de uma pequena montanha.
What followed over the next few days unleashed a level of chaos and craziness that permanently changed the region, at least the lives of the people who survived.
Para chegar no local, só que eu cheguei lá, como eu expliquei, já havia alguns soldados lá que bloquearam a passagem e me obrigaram literalmente a voltar. Quais veículos a mais tinham lá, além dos dois caminhões? Tinha um helicóptero do exército, bem grande. O helicóptero não era esse helicóptero pequeno, esse helicóptero bem grande que carrega civis, coisa. Ambulância branca? É ambulância manchada de cores do exército, aquela tipo camuflada.
Local residents spot the UFO. While NORAD, along with the Brazilian Army and Air Force units, were scrambling to understand what was crashing into the region, some farmers were already faced with the strange sightings. Around 1:15 a.m., farmers Aurelina Augusta de Freitas and her husband, Eurico Rodrigues, were jolted awake by the sudden panic of their cattle. They were agitated and pounding their hooves on the pasture. Drawn to the window by the chaos, they thought they would see a predator or strange weather, but what they saw instead was something they would never forget. It was a cigar-shaped object gliding eerily low above their farm, hovering just meters above the ground. The craft they were seeing wasn't an ordinary plane or balloon. Its elongated form looked like a submarine or massive metal tube, and it seemed to be battered and trembling, as if it was injured in a conflict. From its rear, there was a thick trail of white smoke or vapor going into the night air. The couple watched, breathless and shocked, as the object drifted slowly, as if it was hesitating to land on their field. It was moving in distress, hesitant and uncertain. According to them, they watched this object for about 40 minutes as it hovered over their farm. Eventually, the strange craft drifted over a distant ridge and vanished from sight. This UFO could be exactly what NORAD was tracking, but by the time they got there, it was gone, and they could only take the word of the two farmers. Although the craft was gone, the military blocked the area, but one witness didn't believe what he saw when passing by. Findings at the crash site. This witness was Carlos de Souza, and the moment he reached the site where the mysterious object had struck Earth, it was like something he had never expected. Carlos was one of the many residents of the small town who spotted the strange, cigar-shaped craft struggling through the sky and trailing white smoke. But instead of just standing in awe, he followed its descent until he came upon an open field filled with wreckage. The impact was quiet, but the air was thick with a powerful choking stench, like a blend of ammonia and sulfur that burned his eyes and nose so intensely he had to press his shirt over his face just to breathe. Around him, there was a chaotic scatter of debris and fragments of metal unlike anything he had seen. One piece in particular caught his attention. It was a thin, metallic foil that looked almost like everyday aluminum. Yet when he crumpled it in his hand, it magically sprung back into its original shape, as if it had a life of its own. The strange material drifted to the ground like a feather when he finally let go, defying gravity and all expectations of what wreckage should do. Carlos could barely take note of everything he had seen when a convoy of army vehicles thundered across the field. Soldiers dismounted with rifles drawn, and one of the soldiers approached him, shouting and demanding that he leave immediately. Carlos was faced with the barrel of a gun and feeling confusion, fear, and unanswered questions. He had no choice but to step away. Although Carlos left, he wasn't the only person in the Varginha town to spot the signs of these UFOs. It seems like whatever crashed and later disappeared left some strange aliens behind, because the townspeople started to report seeing strange creatures all around town. Strange creatures spotted around town. The calm routine of life in Varginha was not only shattered by the crash of the UFO, but the reports of strange humanoid beings wandering through town. In the afternoon of January 20th, 1996, word spread like wildfire after a college student claimed to have seen an odd figure crouched near an alleyway by a local park. He described it as about 4 to 5 feet tall, with dark brown, oily skin, very small hands, with 3 long fingers, no hair or clothes, and large, unsettling eyes unlike any normal animal or human. Just a little later that same day, 3 young women, Lilian and Valkyria Silva, and their friend Katia Xavier, were headed home through a vacant lot when their ordinary afternoon turned into a moment they would never forget. What began as a mundane walk quickly became a nightmare as they stumbled upon a creature crouched silently by a wall. Its skin gleamed strangely in the sunlight, and its oversized red eyes fixed on them in silence. The girls also noticed that there were strange bumps or ridges on its head, a frail, thin body, and an ammonia-like smell in the air that seemed to cling to the scene long after it was gone. It was the same smell that Carlos perceived when he went to the crash site. Terrified, the women fled screaming toward safety, convinced they had witnessed something beyond explanation. When they returned with an adult, the creature was gone. But they still found strange footprints with 3 toes, and that lingering stench remained where it was. But after this happened, the Brazilian armed forces launched an official investigation and said that this was not an extraterrestrial incident at all. It stated that the girls' sightings were because of misinterpretation and miscommunication. But the locals in Varginha and UFO enthusiasts were not convinced and began to suspect that there was a cover-up involved. This is especially since some of the police in Brazil chased down one of these creatures and captured it. But you won't believe what happened next. Capturing a small creature. Later on the afternoon of January 20th, 1996, 2 military police officers were driving near town when something strange darted across the road. Instead of an animal or a lost dog, what stood before them was a small, humanoid figure, unlike anything they'd seen. Acting without hesitation, Corporal Marco Eli Cereze and his partner chased it into a field and captured the creature with their bare hands, placing it in their vehicle and heading straight for the local hospital to seek help. Once at the hospital, it was a scene like something we've never seen. Word spread so fast that military personnel filled the entire wings of the facility, and the doctors and nurses couldn't believe what they were facing. The medical staff tried to stabilize the creature even if they didn't know what it was, but it died quickly. Its death was not the end, as you might expect. Things took an even darker turn in the days that followed. Therese, who was previously healthy and strong, started complaining of strange symptoms. Witnesses talked about how he spoke of a persistent, greasy or sticky sensation on his skin where he had touched and carried the creature, and he had a strong ammonia smell that refused to scrub off, regardless of how many times he took a bath. Within days, his health deteriorated very quickly, and he was admitted to intensive care with symptoms like fever, pain, and a mysterious infection. The doctors struggled to find out what was wrong with him and tested his blood, only to find out that it contained unknown toxic substances. He died a few weeks later, and ufologists suspect that this might be because of the creature. But this was not the end of the strange sightings that happened in Varginha after that UFO crashed. Aside from policemen in another part of town, firefighters spotted another creature and eventually managed to capture it. Firefighters captured another creature. On the same afternoon of January 20th, 1996, in Varginha, a week after the UFO was spotted by NORAD and crashed, firefighters also spotted these creatures. Residents reported something unusual moving near a wooded area not far from town, and although one might expect a lost dog or stray livestock, what awaited was anything but ordinary. Firefighters were following the growing crowd and whispers of strange sightings and decided to go into the brush. But they didn't realize that they would be cornering a creature unlike anything they have ever seen before. They netted the alien which was injured and also had a strong ammonia-like odor, like the other creatures spotted, and loaded it with haste into a military vehicle. But they couldn't keep this a secret because the onlookers were watching as this happened. From that moment, there was a sense of urgency. As the creature was secured, military forces moved in swiftly, shoring up roads and sealing off key areas. They also locked down the outdoor sections of the regional hospital, where the presence of army vehicles and personnel grew by the hour. Civilians also saw bodies and unusual materials shrouded in sealed bags, and these were transported under strict guard. Inside the hospital, the doctors and staff were kept at a distance as odor-filled corridors and makeshift containment zones seemed to whisper of something biological and baffling. What's more, the smell of ammonia and sulfur lingered in the air. It was impossible to wash away and haunted those who passed through, even after the military convoy left. The people of Varginha couldn't believe what was happening in their town, whether the creature was a real biological anomaly or an earthly animal that they didn't recognize. But the military's containment and restricted access was all the proof they needed to know that something strange was in their town. The government had to quickly put a lid on it and began the process of a cover-up. Cover-ups and threatening witnesses. The events in Varginha didn't end with the UFO caching or the mysterious creatures. Instead, it led to fear, secrecy, and intimidation over everyone who crossed their path. In the hours and days after the crash and the alien sightings, the medical staff at local hospital and emergency responders were warned not to speak publicly about what they had seen or handled. A mixed armed detail arrived at the hospital after an unusual patient was brought in, and the hospital workers were told to keep quiet about the event by military personnel who had removed the patient. They said that if anyone discloses what they saw, there would be severe consequences. In fact, one of the individuals said that the officers looked them directly in the eyes and stressed that if anyone dares to talk about what happened or what they saw, they would face harsh penalties. Aside from the direct military warnings, some hospital sections were shut down, access restricted, and regular staff were discouraged from discussing anything unusual with journalists, researchers, or even their own families. Some nurses were reluctant to talk at first, but they later revealed that closed-door meetings and top-down directives emphasized that the organization should deny any extraordinary activity. This led to a web of mystery, with global legend of government cover-ups and silenced witnesses. The cover-up was so serious that many didn't talk about what they saw until years later. Soldier sees alien in a box. Many years after the 1996 Varginha events, when sightings of UFOs and strange creatures had already become local legend, there was renewed attention on the case in Varginha. This was because of the documentary Moment of Contact by filmmaker James Fox. In that film, anonymous military testimony played an important role in rekindling global curiosity about what truly happened that January in Brazil. It was only one voice, identified only as Military X, painted an especially haunting picture of what he saw that night. The soldier was part of the convoy that moved mysterious cargo from Humanitas Hospital after the reported capture of a creature. What he described wasn't ordinary military equipment, but something stored carefully inside a covered box or container on a stainless steel table. The box was covered, but he knew that what was inside wasn't something of this world. It was an unidentifiable body with dark, oily skin and odd feet, unlike any human appendage he had ever seen. As he looked closer, the soldier's shock grew. The foot that was visible from under the covering was V-shaped, a detail that immediately convinced him that he wasn't looking at a person or familiar animal. He said he was told later by a superior that what he saw was supernatural, and then he was warned to never speak of it again. He was afraid of speaking and ruining his career, so he kept what he saw a secret for many years. The mystery of the Varginha UFO and aliens remains known, but many say that the deep involvement of the U.S. Air Force was a sign that something strange was out there. Unusual U.S. Air Force involvement. The Varginha UFO incident led to dramatic claims of unusual involvement by the United States Air Force, and that led to an international layer to the mystery that has kept people debating the event for decades. Local Brazilian witnesses and a former Brazilian Air Force traffic controller claimed that, shortly after the mid-January 1996 events, a USAF cargo plane landed at Campinas' Viracopos Airport to load what was described as unusual cargo before leaving for an unknown destination in the United States. Aside from this strange landing, there were other accounts connected to the alleged U.S. involvement, which described 2 helicopters leaving from Campinas to Varginha to collect something, probably the remains or materials connected with the crash and the captured entities, and returning to load them onto the cargo plane. This is more like evidence that the authorities from outside Brazil stepped in to retrieve and control sensitive materials and biological specimens. This led to suspicions of an international retrieval or cover-up. But the Brazilian investigation findings remain the same, and they always say that no alien creature was captured, and that all the unusual military vehicle movements were unrelated routine activity. They gave seemingly normal explanations for the different sightings and aliens, but there was no evidence. This is unlike the UFO that crashed in Poland, as in this case, the entire UFO was left behind. UFO crashes in Poland. In the quiet stretch of the Świętokrzyski forest in Poland, a curious discovery stirred local buzz and ignited speculation about something out of the ordinary. A man named Wojciech Domagala, while trekking through the woods, stumbled upon a strange, pear-shaped metallic object, half buried beneath leaves and time-worn earth. The object was so unusual that he quickly took pictures of the UFO and sent them to the regional newspaper. The object looked weathered, and this suggested that it had been in the forest for a long time. But it had smooth, rounded edges and sizable form which set it apart from the typical scrap metal or discarded equipment. Instead of being quickly dismissed, the photos sparked debate. The newspaper offered a grounded explanation and suggested that the debris could be from construction equipment, perhaps something similar to an old concrete mixer or machinery part left behind and forgotten in the woods. But for some ufologists, this object was definitely something strange. Ufologists and enthusiasts pointed to echoes of the acorn-shaped craft and compared it to the 1965 Kecksburg incident in Pennsylvania, where an object with a similar shape was seen. But this object was removed under mysterious military supervision. Even stranger, the UFO that crashed in the Polish forest later disappeared, never to be seen again. Still, the photo remained, and that was the physical evidence that experts needed to look into the matter. The lack of physical evidence is the problem that plagues the Varginha UFO case, causing many to question whether it's true. When the UFO crashed in Varginha, Brazil, many thought that it would just be another sighting. But moments later, something crazier happened, with alien sightings, strange creatures being captured, and government cover-ups. What shocked you the most about this sighting? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. So, thanks for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.